Welcome to IAP2 Canada and IAP2 USA's learning webinar. We're really excited to be able to invite everyone to today's webinar. It is on online engagement tools for broad public participation with both Dave Biggs and Tim Bonneman. We're just watching as everyone joins us, and we're watching all of everyone come on board. We are expecting about 80 participants today, so we are just going to hang in there for maybe one more minute just as other people are coming online. My name is Amelia Shaw, and I am going to be your moderator today. And as mentioned, we'll get going in about 30 seconds. So if you can just hang in for just a few more seconds. So, again, as mentioned, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Amelia Shaw. I'm going to be your moderator, and I really sincerely welcome you on behalf of both IAP2 USA and IAP2 Canada to the IAP2 June webinar, Online Engagement Tools for Broad Public Participation. Before we get going, I'm going to invite Drew just to provide a few housekeeping items on what you can expect over the next hour. Drew.
All right, we've got our presentations happening, of course, and during that time, I've got all your microphones muted. So if you've self-muted your microphone, could you please take it off that, and then there'll be an opportunity throughout the entire presentation for some kind of interactions. If you've got a question or a comment or whatever, you'll see that there's a couple of ways of getting our attention. One of them is to click on this little hand icon that you'll see there, and that indicates that you want to say something. Click on that, and we will come to you and unmute your microphone, and then you'll be able to ask your question. Or if you'd rather write out your question, you can use the question box and send that in, and Amelia will be watching that as well, and she'll read out your question when it's an appropriate time to do that, and then we'll get you the answers, and you can interact with us that way. So you've got the question box, or you've got put up your hand and we'll unmute your microphone. The other thing to note is that this will be recorded, and it will be online, available on the IAP2 and Canada and IAP2 USA websites. Usually, we say within 48 hours. It's usually within about 2 hours of the end of the webinar. So you'll have a chance to review it, because ordinarily the reviews are for members or those who have paid, but because we've opened this up to anybody, non-members, members alike, for nothing, it will be on the public portion of the IAP2 websites. So that'll be something to look forward to, a chance for you to review the various things that come out of that. And so that is about it for our housekeeping issues. So I'll give it back to Amelia now to introduce our presenters.
Thank you so much, Drew, and again, welcome to everyone who's currently joining us. It's my great pleasure to be able to introduce both Dave Biggs and Tim Bonneman. Dave Biggs is the co-founder of MetroQuest, which is an internationally recognized author and public engagement strategist, focusing on the use of software tools to enhance community participation. With over 20 years of experience on a wide range planning projects with government clients and consulting firms, he has built a reputation for leading-edge community outreach. Many projects have earned national awards and are cited by agencies like the APA, TRB, and FHWA as best practices for stakeholder engagement. Tim Bonneman is the founder and CEO of Intellitics, Incorporated, a digital engagement startup based in San Jose, California, United States. Intellitics helps communities and organizations apply technology to drive collaborative governance and public participation with a focus on advanced dialogue and deliberative processes. Tim has 15 years experience working in the internet technology sector and has been an avid observer and community researcher at the intersection of participatory democracy and technology. Since 2010, Tim has served on the board of directors at IAP2 USA. And so with that, it is my pleasure to turn it over to Dave. Dave, over to you, please.
Well, thank you very much, Amelia and Drew, and welcome everyone. It's my pleasure to deliver some information about online engagement tools today. I know that the rise of online engagement tools has taken everybody by storm in the last few years, and really I'm here to demystify a little bit the myriad of tools that are available, and to try to develop some taxonomy or categorization around those tools to help you understand the differences between them and how each one has strengths for different parts of the planning process. I thought it would be interesting to start with a little overview of who's on the call today. So we have a poll for you. We would like to know what best describes your workplace. So Drew, if you wouldn't mind putting the poll up, we can get people's answers.
Sounds great, and the poll's up there. So what best describes your workplace? Are you public sector, private sector, or school and university? So I'll give you about 5 more seconds to respond to that, and we'll close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Drew. Okay, so what do we have? We have 44% of you from the public sector, 51% from the private sector, and 5% from school or university. So there you go, Dave. That's who's joined us this morning and this afternoon.
Very good. Well, a wonderful mix of mostly private and public sector. Certainly that resonates with the need for online engagement in public sector projects. I would imagine that many of the private sector folks out there are working with public sector clients on a lot of their projects, so makes a lot of sense. And when we look at, and I don't know how many of you are aware of the IAP2 spectrum, but certainly members of IAP2 are well aware of this spectrum. It gives us an interesting taxonomy of the different levels of public engagement or public impact that that can be wrought on a particular project with respect to how we engage stakeholders. At one end, we could just simply inform stakeholders and the public about a particular project and provide mostly information out. And at the other end, we're more or less turning over the keys to the decision making to the public in the empower phase. And the ones in the middle, consult, involve, and collaborate, are different levels of involvement. Consult is simply collecting information to inform decisions, mostly for public sector type planning projects. This is mostly applied in those contexts. Involve starts to talk a little bit more about involving the community at various stages throughout the planning process, from very early on all the way through to implementation. And collaborate is, as it would imply, a very thorough discussion where there's some rolling up the sleeves that happen and some real work that happens in terms of getting inside the details of what's being decided and having a real discussion and collaboration interactively with the community. So with that taxonomy, when you're thinking about online engagement, it's useful to think about at what level you would like to engage the public and at what level of involvement is appropriate for the decisions that are being made and the political environment around those decisions. And when we think about online engagement tools, I know all of you must suffer, as I do, from some confusion around all of the different tools that are popping up. And it seems like every conference that I go to, I meet 2 or 3 new vendors and new tools that are out there on the market. There's been a proliferation over the past few years. And so I thought it would be useful to provide some sort of taxonomy. Now, I offer this with a caveat that there's many different taxonomies that are possible. It's possible to slice and dice these tools in a variety of different ways. This is just one way of characterizing them that seems to resonate with me and make sense. And so I'm going to use it today to talk about the different types of tools that I think are relevant when you're looking at the task of involving online engagement in your planning processes. So the first one that I'm going to mention is crowdsourcing. And crowdsourcing is a unique experience where essentially the public is generating the content. The public is generating their ideas, and they're also reacting to each other's ideas. So the public comes up with thoughts, and the other members of the public vote on them, and everybody sort of collaborates, and we're hoping, anyways, throughout that process that the best ideas rise to the top. So that is crowdsourcing, where essentially the words crowdsourcing, we're sourcing the information from the crowd. It differs from survey. A survey essentially is designed by the project participants, by the project proponents, and the public is reacting to specific questions. So the content is created by the project team, and the public is reacting to it. So it's primarily a conversation from the public to the planning agency or the project participants, as opposed to in crowdsourcing, where the primary flow of dialogue is between different members of the public. In surveying, we're collecting very specific input on specific questions to inform, typically, the outcomes of a particular plan. Moving on, there's platforms. Platforms are a special breed of tool where you can almost think of a platform like a Swiss Army knife. A platform provides a foundation for multiple tools and functionality to manifest. So there are certain platforms you can plug in different aspects depending on what you need, and the platform provides some consistency for you to do that work. So there are platform tools out there that have crowdsourcing tools and excuse me, survey tools built into them. Next on the list is stakeholder management. As you can imagine, having all of these conversations with different stakeholders and the public can become quite complicated in terms of keeping track of all of that dialogue and managing the stakeholders themselves. As a result, there are some firms that have popped up that develop online tools to allow you to manage stakeholders and the conversations that we're having. So that's a different category of tool. This is mostly in the form of dashboards to help you keep track of that information coming and going in and out of the agency. And the fifth section here is social networks, and we're familiar with Facebook and Twitter and a variety of other social networks. I included this one here because it is often used on online engagement projects, oftentimes in consultation in conjunction with other tools. Social networks provide an interesting way to engage the public and have different strengths and weaknesses in terms of how you can use them in public discourse. So with that, I'm going to ask another question. What is your level of experience with online public participation tools? So I'm going to ask you to choose one of these, and we'll get Drew to pop up the survey.
And it's up there.
Number one is none. Number two is I've seen some demonstrated. Number three is I've tried them on a project or two. And number four is I've used them several times. Excuse me, Carrie.
So thanks very much, Dave. And it is up there. And so you've got about 5 seconds to respond to this question. And we'll be closing it in 2, 1. Drew, over to you, please. And the response, actually 4% of the people online, Dave, have never used it, so none. 38% have seen these demonstrated, 42% have tried them on my projects, and 16% have used them a lot. So 4% for none, 38% for I've seen some demonstrated, 42% for I've tried them on a few of my projects, and 16% have used them a lot. Back to you.
Very good. Thanks, Amelia, and thanks, everyone. So it's a nice spectrum today, and I'm glad that we have some folks in the audience that have had some experience with this. Looking forward to some questions after the demonstration from those folks, and I'm also glad that there's some people that have yet to try them, and hopefully we can encourage you to try them, or at least demystify some of the questions that you have. The next question. And this is the last question before we jump into demonstrating a lot of these different tools. What's holding you back? If there's something that is holding you back from using online engagement tools more regularly or at all, pick any of these that apply. So lack of knowledge, or I'm nervous about them. Is that holding you back? Lack of personnel, don't have the people to actually coordinate it. Number 3, lack of buy-in within your organization. Number 4, cost. Or number 5, just haven't found one that fits your process.
So thanks very much, Dave. Everyone now has the opportunity to quickly vote, and we'll be closing it again in 5 seconds. Drew, if you could close the poll, please. And the response, 40% of the participants online, Dave, are lack of knowledge or I'm nervous about it. 29% is the lack of personnel. 48% lack of buy-in at my organization, so that's quite significant. The cost was 29%, and 24% said, I haven't found one that fits. So those were the numbers. Back to you.
Thanks a lot, Amelia. That's very interesting, folks. Well, hopefully, at the end of this, some of these barriers will have been reduced. That's my hope. So let's jump in, and it's going to go fairly fast-paced. Now, I'm going to show you a variety of different tools using the taxonomy that I presented earlier. So the first tool that I'm going to mention is a crowdsourcing tool. It's called MindMixer. It is probably, arguably, one of the 2 most broadly used tools out there. I would say MindMixer and MetroQuest are probably the 2 most broadly used throughout North America online engagement tools. MindMixer is a crowdsourcing tool. And so as a result of that focus, it's focused on collecting ideas from the community. So basically putting questions out there and getting people to respond with their own thoughts and ideas, gathering that feedback, and getting the audience to vote on each other's ideas in kind of a round robin where the ideas that are most popular rise to the top. And as a result, people have a lot of dialogue back and forth with each other through voting on different ideas and trying to come up with better ideas and more popular ideas. There's an interesting competition feature in there that encourages people to try to score more highly, vote on more ideas, and have their ideas rise to the top. So MindMixer, probably one of the most widespread crowdsourcing tools out there. The next tool that I'll mention is called Open.
So Dave?
Yes.
Dave? Sorry,
yes.
Just before you carry on, we did have a quick question. I think you had mentioned MetroQuest as one of the other ones, but maybe you'd like to talk to the fact that you're going to be talking about a lot of different organizations as we move through today's presentation, and we'll try and pause occasionally if anyone has any other questions.
Absolutely. I will be covering a wide range of different tools today, very briefly, and I'll actually show some hands-on examples as well. My pleasure. Thanks, Amelia. So the next tool is called Open Town Hall. It is also a crowdsourcing tool. It's different than MindMixer in that It's focused on creating as authentic an experience as possible, representing what happens in government. So it has some interesting features that tries to focus on a more civil discourse. For example, people can only comment once on a particular issue, so avoiding grandstanding that can sometimes happen, even online. And it is focused on government sort of dialogue and projects. Ideascale is another crowdsourcing tool. It tends to be a little bit more bare bones, and as a result, it's sometimes more cost-effective on projects. It's a simpler, less feature-rich software that can be deployed very, very quickly, and similar to MindMixer and other crowdsourcing tools, allows users to submit ideas, vote on each other's ideas, and the hope is that the best ideas rise to the top. Next is Open Town Hall. And Open Town Hall is another crowdsourcing tool. It has a couple of different features that set it apart. It does allow for the typical sort of crowdsourcing idea generation. It also allows people to do things like prioritize different tasks. So it has some basic survey capabilities along with the crowdsourcing, and it also is something that can be deployed fairly quickly. For something a little bit different, also in the crowdsourcing category, CrowdBright is a tool that allows people to provide essentially sticky notes or post-it notes on an. Imagine you have a plan of your community, and it invites people to post comments and see each other's comments as they're posted on particular locations around that image. People can vote on each other's ideas and see what each other has said, and hopefully then collect some rich ideas for the planning process. Another one in the crowdsourcing category is called Considerit. It has, again, a bit of a different take on things, where its focus is on not only on the creation of ideas, but on the improvement of those ideas. So people can vote on different ideas and suggest improvements to them. So we can talk about the pros and cons of different ideas, and over the course of some engagement, improve them as things go along. Unlike other crowdsourcing tools, its strength is in lower numbers of people. So if you have a conference that's coming together, and so the number of conference attendees might participate, so it allows people in smaller numbers to collaborate on a shared set of ideas. Granicus is another hybrid tool where it provides both crowdsourcing capabilities with its Speak Up platform, but it also provides a platform within which other tools can sit. So you could have you could combine the crowdsourcing with other survey tools using its platform as a way of bringing together various functionality. Also in the category of crowdsourcing, but also with survey capabilities, is a tool called Engagement HQ. And this was a tool developed out of Australia, but it is represented here in North America by SustainNet. And it allows people to do crowdsourcing, to listen to each other's ideas and vote on each other's ideas, but it also has some platform characteristics where it has some survey capabilities as well. So it allows some flexibility in terms of being able to both crowdsource ideas and also ask specific questions. Now moving down into the survey category, there's a tool that I'm sure most people listening today will be familiar with, SurveyMonkey. It is an online survey tool that allows people to create their own questions and post them online. It tends to be fairly text-based, so people can answer specific questions, multiple choice, and the typical sort of survey sort of questions. It doesn't actually tend to be used as frequently in planning projects because it is so text-based and I don't think is allows planners to get at some of the more nuanced visual information that they would like to get across. But it is a tool that is quite frequently used for online engagement. Also in the survey category is Textizen, and Textizen is another survey tool which is focused on the mobile audience. So as we know, mobile use is prevalent and is growing very, very quickly, particularly with the younger demographic. Textizen allows for very quick surveys to be put together and allow people to text a particular number and receive questions about a particular initiative and answer them using their mobile phone. The next tool is actually a tool I'm very familiar with. I work at MetroQuest, full disclosure, and this tool falls into the category of surveys as well. It is also a platform in that it provides a variety of different functionality to allow people to create very visual surveys where there's an informational aspect, an educational aspect. Its focus is on collecting informed input from the broadest demographic, so and using very visual information. And I'll show you an example of this in our case study. Next is PlaySpeak.
So Dave, just before you
yes.
head into the...
Yes.
Sorry, Dave, just we are
yes.
getting some questions given that it's very rich in all of the information. And again, just a reminder to everyone that the webinar will be available online afterwards. So if you're not capturing everything and you want to come back to part of it, it will be available online on both the IAP2 Canada and IAP2 USA websites. Sorry, Dave. Sorry to interrupt. People are keen and they're obviously paying close attention. So just want to let people know that it will also be available later.
That's great. And listen, Amelia, if there's any specific questions that come up, I'll do my best to answer them. I've had hands-on experience with many of these tools, so I'll do my best to answer any questions if we have time in the Q&A as well.
Great. And so I will continue to monitor, so please send me your questions and I will make sure that Dave gets them. Thanks.
So the next tool I wanted to cover is called PlaceSpeak, and PlaceSpeak is a survey tool, but it's also a platform, and its focus is on location-based community consultation. Its unique feature is it geolocates the audience. So it allows people to put in and requires people to put in their address and verify their address so you know who is being represented in your community involvement. And then from there, from that audience of people who have registered with their address, it allows people to then answer survey questions and allows the project participants to know specifically who they're hearing from. The next tool is called Engaging Plans, and it's developed by Urban Interactive Studio. And it is a platform for community engagement. You can think of it as a kit to build a website for a planning project that involves a variety of different tools, including survey tools, but also calendar of events and other things that you would want to have in your planning project to let people know what's going on and to engage them at the same time. Next tool here, I mentioned SustainNet. They're a representative of Engagement HQ, the tool that I talked about, developed out of Australia. They also have a tool called Stake Tracker, and Stake Tracker falls into the category of stakeholder management. And stakeholder management, as I said in my taxonomy slide, is a way of keeping track of all of the dialogue that you have with particular stakeholders and recording it and keeping it organized so you can understand who you're hearing from, when they were last contacted, what information they got, and so forth. So Stake Tracker is one of the tools that they offer.
So, Dave, just a quick question on PlaceSpeak from Kevin.
Yes.
For rural stakeholders, does PlaceSpeak have the ability to work with legal land locations? Just wondering if you know the answer to that.
I believe it does. PlaceSpeak has developed methodology that allows people to verify their location with a great deal of accuracy. The level of rigor that you put, that you require people to go through in order to verify their address is, I think, up to you. So if you require people to provide legal verification of their particular address, then you can use that as a criteria for your engagement moving forward.
Thanks very much.
So now I'm going to move into a different category, and I do apologize that I'm covering things fairly quickly. I wanted to give you the spectrum of tools that are out there and to help you understand the differences between each. Certainly, each of these tools would be very happy. You'd be very well advised to get a demonstration of each of these tools that sound interesting to you to learn more. Moving on to social networking tools, we all hear people talking about Facebook and how it could be used for public involvement. We've seen Facebook used very successfully on public involvement efforts, but I think it's important to characterize how it can be used. We've seen it used in really two ways. The first way is to help promote a online engagement effort. So allowing people to share what they've done with an online engagement tool with their friends on Facebook is an absolute must. If you create an experience and people share it with their friends, that will help you spread the word. The second way to use Facebook is to actually start a Facebook page of your own for the project. So this is a project that we're working on that I was aware of that did a particularly good job on their Facebook page. So when you go to their Facebook page and like it, you can see a variety of updates of what's happening on the project, and you can use it to keep in touch with people that have expressed interest in the project. And so it's a good way to keep people notified and also give people a chance to comment on things because it's got a commenting feature built right in. The next tool is Twitter. So this same project also did a great job with their Twitter page. And Twitter is just another vehicle to allow people to establish an identity for a project and to establish a following for people that are interested in that, and to publish stories or links in that Twitter feed to your followers that allow you to stay top of mind and to provide information that's relevant to those people, to keep them interested and keep them involved in the project as it's going forward. Both Facebook and Twitter, if you're going to create a page like this, it requires a certain level of commitment from somebody on your team to make sure that it's got fresh content that keeps up to date regularly. There's nothing worse than starting a Twitter page or a Facebook page and having nothing there for weeks. People who do arrive will understand that it's not a very active site, and they will probably not like it or follow the Twitter feed. LinkedIn is another one that we hear mentioned quite frequently. I don't think it's a very good tool for particular planning projects, but it is a very good tool for stakeholder engagement. If people on the planning team are connected to other professionals in their area, it's likely that they're connected through LinkedIn. So if you have a project that's focused on stakeholder engagement as opposed to public involvement, then maybe LinkedIn is a great tool for you. Regardless of how you're going to use Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or any of the other tools, there's tools like Hootsuite that allow you to manage your stream of information that's going out to your followers very quickly. So in this tool, Hootsuite, I can, for example, publish a message simultaneously to a variety of different locations. So if I typed in here a message and provided a link for an exciting a piece of information for people following the project, and I pressed send, it would simultaneously go out to 2 different Twitter streams, my personal Facebook page, our Facebook page for our firm, my LinkedIn page, and this LinkedIn group. So you can imagine a whole series of different places where you might be publishing information, where you can use this dashboard to publish information in one place and send it out to multiple groups simultaneously. So these tools become very efficient at allowing you to manage a flow of information, because there's nothing better on social networks than to have regular updates going out so you stay top of mind and keep relevant information going out. You do need to make that commitment to provide relevant information, and once you do, these sort of tools can make it fairly streamlined. YouTube is another tool that I don't think is used enough in planning projects. It's a great way to engage the audience, and the number of views that you could potentially get on videos is astounding if they're compelling. It is costly to produce videos, but it's getting less and less expensive all the time, and people are much more accustomed to amateur videos, even cell phone videos. So I think the level of professionalism is not as important as getting content out on a regular basis and providing the right descriptions and keywords to allow people to find it. So this is a project that we worked on where we were asking people in kind of a speaker's corner sort of environment what's special about their neighborhood, and we got people to post their descriptions of what they liked about their neighborhood, what was special to them, and it took off very nicely, and it really engaged people in an interesting way. And this was before people had their own devices that they could take videos and upload them almost instantaneously. So another great tool that I think could be used on projects.
So thank you, Dave. Just a quick question from Stephen, and Stephen's question is: should citizens be required to join services like Facebook that track personal information in order to participate in a public discussion?
I don't think requiring anybody to do anything is appropriate on public projects. I think it is more about providing multiple ways that people can participate. If you're a Facebook user, then people are accustomed to using it and would like to engage in that way. Other people are not interested in Facebook. They might be interested in other social networks, or they might be only interested in the face-to-face events. I think it's mostly about providing a variety of different alternatives to allow people to engage in the way that they feel most comfortable. Sorry, Carrie.
Thanks, Dave. Back to you.
My pleasure. Instagram is another tool, and I think it's the last tool that I have to mention. Instagram is a way of having people present different images, and they're also they have capable hashtags that they can use. So if you have a hashtag for your project, then people could find images. I like this because people are out there with their phones and taking images, and if you have for example, you have a competition for who can come up with the most compelling images of what's great about their community or what concerns them the most about their community, and get them to put in a hashtag about it and put it up on Instagram, then people could see from all over the community about different locations that people like or dislike or think need improvement. I think it could be a very engaging way to bring in particularly the younger folks that are populating Instagram. The last one is blogging. How should blogging be used in public projects? Blogging is not very well used in public projects, probably because it requires quite a bit of time from the project participants or proponents to create blog stories and get them out there. Blog stories, if you have the capacity of creating blog stories, can be a very useful tool in engaging people in a little bit more deeper discussion and thought. It's only useful if you have, I don't know if you can see it, this is my blog here. We've got some responses. If you have open comments, blogging becomes a way of engaging large numbers of people. If it's closed for comments, then it's a one-way flow of information and wouldn't really, I wouldn't characterize it as engagement. So now I'm going to move on to, I wanted to spend a little bit of time giving you one concrete example of how these tools could be used in conjunction with each other on a particular project. Because I'm most familiar with projects that I've worked on, I've picked a project that we worked on where they did a great job of not only employing MetroQuest, but employing a variety of other tools, and I think it's when tools are used in tandem that we really leverage the most out of online engagement. MetroQuest it allows people to engage in a variety of different ways: web-based engagement, engagement on smartphones, with tablets, kiosks, and in workshop settings. Its focus is on engaging large numbers of people, and so we have lots of ways of allowing people to engage. And what we've discovered is it's really only powerful if people engage in their friends. If we're taking full advantage of the web, if people are not willing to share it with their friends, then we don't see very deep engagement at all. So really thinking deeply about what do people share is an important filter to put your online engagement through. Now, it's true that online engagement is not going to bring in the broadest audience. We're going to need to fill in the gaps. And so one thing that we did in this particular project that I'm talking about is we used iPads in face-to-face sessions that allowed people to, in a friendly way, this person here is helping people to get started and allowing them to participate online, but do it in a way that they've got some help and supervision if they need it. In this tool, in this case study that I'm talking about, they also used kiosks in locations, public locations, community centers, and so forth, and allowed people, even without access to computers, to participate in a quick survey. Now, MetroQuest is a platform, as I mentioned, and it has a variety of different screen types, and you can pick different screen types depending on what kind of public involvement and what kind of information you want to collect. I'm going to turn over here to show you what this particular case study did. So they have a welcome screen here. This is a regional plan for Tampa. And the first question here, which I think is a very important question to start a community involvement, ask people what their priorities are. It's probably the most engaging question that you can ask people, to rank their priorities. Then they move over here and they can look at different scenarios and see a visualization of how the scenario performs, and they can also see how it performs based on their top priority. So this one does well on my top priorities. There is a trade-off there, but I'm going to give it a nice rating. And there also is a quick visual preference survey to allow people to weigh in on different, for example, housing types and so forth. And then the last screen engages people and asks people a few questions about themselves and talks about where we are in the planning process. And this ever-present set of buttons here is probably the most powerful thing that you can bring with their friends on social networks. Other ways of engaging are, collecting people's information on, for example, where improvements are needed. So you can collect people's information of where more public transit is needed. And so looking at the different aspects of collecting information is one thing, and providing an easy way for people to provide that information online is important. But it's also important to make it available and to get the word out. So this project did a really great job, I think, of providing kiosks around the community so people could access it even if they did not have access to a computer. These wonderful smiling faces here are the newscasters in the local area, and they're trying to encourage people. So they were using video to try to get the word out and get people to participate. So there was really a multi-pronged approach in this project. They also had a series of face-to-face sessions that were facilitated that would engage people in a conversation, because not everybody is interested in engaging online. Some people want to take a couple of hours and come and ask their questions, and so they provided that as well. And so the website was the way that people could figure out, when the presentations were happening and where they could go and attend. This was the location of kiosks that were placed around the area, so you could actually look at a map and find a kiosk that was close to you. The project that I was just referring to, also we saw their Twitter feed and their Facebook page. So these are the live pages here, and so you can see that they've got a variety of different stories relating to what's going on in the area, and they kept people engaged, and as a result developed quite a following for their project. So again, in this project, a great way to engage people in multiple ways using multiple tools. Now, just to close off on the tool part of the session, if crowdsourcing and survey tools are used together, it's often beginning with a crowdsourcing tool and then moving to a survey tool, because crowdsourcing is very general and wide open and allows people to provide their own information about their own ideas to relevant topics, and surveying hones in on a variety of different specific questions, and so it's more logical to have it second in the planning process. So I'm going to toggle back now to PowerPoint, and I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and with this question wanted to change gears for a second and talk about a conference that's coming up, and I'm just wondering how many people that are online today have attended an IAP2 conference in the past. Choose one.
Thanks very much, Dave. So we'll ask people to respond to that, and we'll close it in 5 seconds. And so, Drew, can we see what people have had to say? So 67% of the people online have never attended an IAP2 conference before, 17% once, and 15% twice. So Tim, this is your opportunity to let people know why they should be joining us and some of the things that we actually do at the IAP2 conferences. So Tim, over to you.
Yes. Hey, a good day to everyone who's on today. So I want to talk briefly about last year's conference. As was mentioned, I serve on the board of directors with IAP2 USA, and the US and Canada together organize an annual conference. And last year, we realized, of course, that digital engagement or online engagement is growing in importance, and we were looking for a way to help our members, our attendees, our practitioners to build capacity, to build literacy in using these tools, in understanding where best to use them, and what some of the trade-offs are that inform the decision where and when to apply them. We also realized that a lot of the vendors in this space aren't just cold people that try to shove their solutions down your throat. They're in fact long-time public participation practitioners and subject matter experts when it comes to using technology to support public participation. So we were looking for a way to bring those things together, and the idea emerged to host a tech fair as an opportunity to connect with practitioners, whether they have never used technology or whether they have some experience, to connect them with some of the experts in the field. And the format that we came up with really aimed at providing space for more in-depth conversation, not just a short sales pitch, but giving our attendees an opportunity to talk with the vendors and these experts about, how to make sense of this overwhelming number of solutions out there, how to better be able to navigate the choices. And Dave did a great job with this overview about touching upon some of these trade-offs. What benefits am I looking for? How do I even know this is worth investing in? Where in the process does it make the most sense for me to add technology? What's the right balance between traditional and online channels? What's going to be the impact on my staff time? What other hidden costs can I expect? Should I use something off the shelf? Do I have to build my own custom solution? Do I have to bring in outside consultants? Do I want to build my own internal staff capacity? All those things are I think, critically important, and hopefully the 20-minute sessions that we set up with the various exhibitors and vendors help people to better navigate those decisions. And I know from feedback that a lot of people learned a lot, and we encourage the vendors, presenters to really be Sherpas, to be helping help guide our attendees in better understanding the field. So that's what we came up with last year, and I'm very glad to hear that the Canadian team this year is going to continue this programming item on the conference agenda, and hopefully we'll see a lot of the vendors that were mentioned today and others there, so they can share their advice and guidance, and hopefully lots of you on the call today will be there to listen and learn.
Yes, and thank you very much for that, Tim. And if we can close the poll so that we can see Dave's slides, it'll give you an opportunity to see where the next conference is happening in Winnipeg. And so we'll head back to Dave's. There it is. And Tim, that's great. And so very much the technology fair is going to be offered in Winnipeg, and it's going to be offered both on the Monday and the Tuesday. And as you've mentioned, I had the opportunity to participate in the Salt Lake City one, and it was really terrific. In fact, I ended up going to both sessions because I spent 20 minutes at each one, and then I came back and asked more questions. So it is definitely a way for those people that are on the line right now, if you want to learn a little bit more about some of these providers and some of these different tools that are available, it gives you that opportunity along with other participants to just learn a little bit more, ask the questions that you might have not had the opportunity to ask, and quite frankly, the other thing is there were questions I didn't even know I should be asking. So by having the other participants sitting there with me, I got to learn a lot, not only from the vendor and the supplier themselves, but also very much from the other participants. But this is our opportunity as well to open it up for Q&A. And we're sincerely hoping that some of the participants out there may have some other questions, whether it's to Dave, whether it's to Tim, or whether it's to IP2 USA or IP2 Canada. If you'd like to send them our way, we have about 5 minutes left with today's webinar, so we'd really appreciate that sort of interactivity. So, anybody? Are there any questions out there? Everyone's being very quiet, Dave and Tim. Just check and see if anyone's got their hands up. I don't see any hands up either.
I think
I see a question from Sean D. McDonald there on our thing.
Yes, I can too. Thanks, Drew. So one of the questions is, what if you have a very large initiative, estimated 25,000 stakeholders across the country, but don't know who they are or how to reach them? What would be the best tool? So
that's a great question. Presumably, there's a subject matter associated with the project that would allow for different industry associations or interest groups to be identified. I think that one of the fastest ways to start understanding and interacting and building an audience is to, with respect to online engagement, is to form alliances with interest groups and industry organizations and public interest organizations that are in the space that you're interested in. They have already done the effort, the work to bring those people together and organize them, and usually have them on newsletter, email lists, and that sort of thing. So providing access to an invitation to participate online to those groups would be the first go-to point for starting to develop a dialogue with the broader community.
Thanks very much.
I'd agree. I mean, it's a kind of a community mapping or a stakeholder mapping exercise that has to happen at the beginning. And luckily, these days, a lot of the organizations that Dave is referring to leave traces on the web. So they have, they have social media, they have a social media presence or web presence and newsletters. And so you can probably, with a little bit of research effort, find your way around who those people are that you should talk to first.
Thanks very much to both Tim and Dave. Are there any other questions? And there is. To clarify about the difference between crowdsourcing and a survey, the former is for open input and the latter is for getting feedback on specific questions. Is that right?
That's right. And actually, I can direct you. I don't know if there's going to be a mail out after this, but I was recently asked that question, and it was a frequently mentioned question, so I wrote a blog post about the difference between crowdsourcing and survey tools. So I could direct you to that blog post. Let me just, here it is here. So two of the most popular tools, as I mentioned, were MetroQuest and MindMixer, and they're two emblematic tools that define the distinction. So here I've got a table of the differentiators, and each one with a column. So they differ in terms of what type of information you're going to need. In crowdsourcing tools, it's open-ended information that you're collecting. And in a survey tool, it's specific information for a particular planning project. There's interactivity differences. The interactivity in crowdsourcing is primarily generating ideas and voting on them. And in surveys, there's a variety of different interactivity that you could have. The flow of dialogue is also different. The flow of dialogue in a crowdsourcing exercise flows between participants. They talk to each other about their ideas. Whereas in a survey, the flow of dialogue is primarily from the participants to the agency and back again.
So thanks very much, Dave. So we are getting many more questions now, so I'm going to try and get them through, and we will go beyond the hour if necessary. But Greg's got his hand up, so I'm actually going to open up Greg's mic, and Greg can ask his question directly. Greg? Greg? So, Greg, we've opened up your mic, so if you're there, you can certainly speak.
Just got a note from Greg saying he doesn't actually have a mic, so.
Okay, no worries. So Greg has said, I read about some online consultation that the feds did in advance of the new prostitution bill. They had in excess of 16,000 entries. I don't know what tool they used, but what would you recommend to be able to manage and analyze that much volume? And actually, he's come back and said it was actually 31,000 entries. So whether or not they're, how to analyze that information.
That's a great question, and I would I'll bring you back to a story. It's very typical in MetroQuest for us to collect 30 to 50,000 pieces of information, and so you certainly don't want to be managing all of those pieces of information manually. We always recommend that when you're putting a survey together to give people lots of ways of categorizing the results themselves, as opposed to just having, put a comment on a map. Allow people to put comments on maps and put them into categories for you. So then you could say, show me all of the places where people are talking about the need for more frequent bus service, and you can see them clustered in different areas. So I think it's really important with online engagement because we have the potential for collecting massive amounts of information. It's useful to plan the design of how you're collecting that information so that you can analyze the results spatially and digitally, as opposed to having to go through one comment at a time and try to figure out what it's talking about.
So
exactly. I mean, it's a design question for us, right? So do you really want to end up with tens of thousands of unstructured content, pieces of unstructured content, text, or if that is a risk for you, that that would negatively impact your staff or other resource situation, maybe you structure your consultation differently and use more structured content in ways that would limit the amount of unstructured. So that's one of the typical trade-offs that you look at when you get more in-depth. You may get more in-depth or richer content with unstructured input, but it can greatly increase the overhead. So you want to find a good balance there.
Thanks. So Tara's asking, in addition to the IAP2 conference, is there somewhere one can get more intensive training on how to use these tools?
It really should be, right?
I think each of the providers offers webinars, demonstrations, and oftentimes it's a very good opportunity for you to kick the tires a little bit and ask questions and figure out how they're actually used in specific case studies. So that would be one step that I would recommend. If there's any tools that you've seen during this presentation that you're interested in finding out more about, sign up for a webinar and get that more detailed information, and you can talk live to somebody and ask them your questions, and they could address any concerns that you might have. There are some organizations like Place Matters and Tim's organization that provide sort of advice in terms of what tools to be used for different applications. So there are some organizations that people can access to provide that information, and certainly IAP2 is one such organization, and the Tech Fair is a great place to essentially, as Amelia said, see a little bit about each of the tools all in one setting, so you could understand the differences between them.
Thank you, and thank you, Tara, for the question. So, Drew, was there one more poll question that we were going to pop up?
There is, and we also have a question that came into us through the chat box, too, from Cassie, who just wants to know, of the crowdsourcing platforms, which is the best or simplest one to start with?
That's a trick question. So
way to go,
with
Cassie.
all these tools, really, it's never really easy to say which is the best one. There's lots of factors to consider, and you may already have existing infrastructure versus getting something that is maybe a better fit for your particular project, but people would have to go there and find it first. There's lots of factors to consider. So, and then as Dave mentioned, the tools have different strengths and weaknesses, right? Whether it's pricing or feature richness. So you definitely want to take a look and start with thinking about what your requirements are and what you're hoping to get out of it, and then look at what might be a few good matches, and then, as Dave said, connect it with those vendors, get a good tour, and then make your decision based on that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tim. So, Drew, could you put up that poll for us now then?
Yeah,
Did you learn something new today? It is the last poll. And again, we're kind of hoping that you've learned something today, but let's hear directly from you. The answers are no, yes, a few things, yes, a lot. So in 5 seconds, we'll close the poll up. And so, Drew, if you could close it. So, Dave and Tim, I'm really happy to say that nobody said no. Yeehaw!
Wow, that's great.
And 56% said yes, a few things, and 44% said yes, they've learned a lot. So I would like to sincerely thank both Dave and Tim for providing today's webinar and providing all of the information and details on today's webinar. On behalf of IAP2 USA and IAP2 Canada, we gratefully appreciate it. And we'd all really like to thank everyone that's taken the time to participate online with us today, whether it was just in listen-only mode or whether it was the questions that you've asked. We will be sending a survey out to all of the participants over the next little while. We would sincerely like to ask you to fill in that survey. It's going to assist us in designing the next webinars, what you like, what you'd like to see changed, all of those types of things. So if you could take a little bit of time to help us with that, that would be gratefully appreciated. As Drew mentioned at the beginning, this webinar will be available online, both for IAP2 Canada and IAP2 USA. And we will also ask both of our presenters, both Tim and Dave, if there's any other materials that you think we should be sharing with these participants. We will also include that up online, whether it's links to specific things or anything else. We'll send that out and make it available on both the IAP2 Canada and IAP2 USA websites, along with the directions to the webinar. So on that note, we've had some very nice comments coming in from people saying, thank you for the great webinar, thank you for this, it's invigorating. We love to hear those comments. Thank you. We're glad that we're meeting our members' needs. And for those of you that aren't members, thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar. I hope that everyone has a terrific day. All the best. Bye-bye now.